Good morning from the almost sunny Copenhagen. Welcome to the webinar MRV for District Energy System, hosted by Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency. My name is Aris. I'm working as a program officer at the Copenhagen Center, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. A couple of things before we move to the main content of our webinar. This webinar is going to be about 70 minutes long, including time for the Q&A at the end. In case you cannot stay until the end or want to get back to our presentations, all the materials and recordings and the recording of the whole webinar will be available online in a few days on the Copenhagen Center's knowledge management system. And we have many other webinars and information there. Have a look. I'll give you more information in a few minutes. Now, before we start discussing about today's webinar, I would like to inform our attendees that we comply with the General Data Protection Act, also known as GDPR. This means that your personal data, such as name, email, workplace, etc., is safely processed and stored, and all of your rights pursuant to the GDPR are respected. You have full access to the data being processed about you, and at any time, you can request that inaccurate data be deleted or rectified. For access or further information, please contact with the people that are presented here. Now, a few things about the Copenhagen Center. The center conducts research and advisory activities in the field of energy efficiency and serves as an energy efficiency hub for the Sustainable Energy for All initiative. The center has an established network of global, regional, and national partners with a broad range of stakeholders to help accelerate the implementation of energy efficiency activities. On a regular basis, the Copenhagen Center is conducting webinars. All materials, including recordings and presentations from previous webinars, can be found on Copenhagen Center's knowledge management system under the e-learning section. The material of today's webinar will be uploaded shortly, but until then, you can check one of the accompanying webinars that are related to today's topic. So I would like to briefly introduce the speaker of today's webinar. Celia is the coordinator for Latin America and Africa of the District Energy in Cities Initiative. Stefan is working as a consultant on the greenwerk. Xianli is our senior economist at the Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency. And Mr. Teng is the general manager at the Guangzhou Pearl River Newtown Energy. Finally, I would like to inform that you can send us your questions during the presentations, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can at the end. Please do not forget to mention the name of the panelist that the question is for. And now I would like to give the floor to Celia.
Welcome to all the attendees, and thank you for joining us in this webinar on monitoring, reporting, and verification for district energy systems. This webinar falls under the framework of the District Energy in Cities Initiative, which is a multi-stakeholder private-public partnership with over 40 partners. That includes private companies, research institutions, and public organizations that is coordinated and hosted by UNEP, the United Nations Environment Programme. UNEP has several collaboration centers, and for this particular initiative, we count with the technical support from the Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency, hosted by the UNEP-DTU partnership, which is organizing this webinar. The mission of the District Energy in Cities Initiative is to support the market transformation efforts to shift the heating and cooling sector to energy efficient and renewable energy solutions by accelerating the deployment of district energy systems. The initiative is mainly funded through volunteer contributions from Denmark and Italy, as well as from the Global Environmental Facility, the Kigali Cooling Efficiency Program, or other foundations like, for example, Danfoss Foundation. Our work consists in assisting local and national governments of developing and middle-income countries in building local know-how and implement enabling policies that will help them accelerate investment in low-carbon and climate-resilient district energy systems. We provide support in 4 key areas, which are awareness raising, and that includes increasing awareness on the multiple benefits of district energy, providing technical assistance to identify potential pilot projects, undertake pre-feasibility studies, design business models, support the project procurement phase, develop long-term local district energy strategies, analyze the local and national potential for district energy, etc. For example, the work that we are presenting today on MRV is part of this area of work and is being performed in collaboration with Copenhagen Center of Energy Efficiency. Our third area of work would be scaling up by developing enabling regulatory frameworks and replicating best practices, and as well as providing capacity building. And the fourth area of work would be unlocking investments and helping local governments and national governments attract investment to actually develop the project. Our objectives with the work on MRV are the following. First, help cities track and validate greenhouse gas emissions reductions, as well as energy savings and other social and economic benefits resulting from district energy, and that could contribute to the city's climate change mitigation commitments. Also, strengthen local emissions tracking process in support of the country's NDC's contribution. Increase confidence in data, the process and the results by defining methodologies for data collection and analysis, as well as ensuring cities put systems in place to collect data and periodically publish results with high levels of transparency throughout the whole process and external verification. Empower consumers to compare different technology options by showing measured results. Also, quantify the benefits of district energy to help policymakers make better decisions and evidence-based policies. And last, enabling the initiative to monitor the progress of the implementation of activities and identify corrective actions to increase effectiveness of implementation. What can you expect from us on the work that we're doing on MRV, and how can we help you? As I mentioned before, the work on MRV has been developed with our collaboration center in Copenhagen. As part of this work, we have developed a guideline for cities to design and implement an MRV framework to track progress and the impact of district energy projects in the city. My colleagues Stefan Wehner and Xianli will give you more details about the content of this guide and how to use it. The MRV guideline will be available to download from the initiative's website by mid-September, I would assume. The website has a resource section where you can find all the publications of the initiative. So I really invite you to check the website regularly to be informed of our latest reports. Also, as part of our work on MRV, there is this series of trainings and capacity building activities to support on how to adapt and implement this general framework into a specific city or country, to be able to measure and report the energy, climate change mitigation and other social and economic benefits from district energy. We did a first training during the annual partners meeting of the initiative in last June in Copenhagen, but only our pilot cities could attend, so this webinar is thought to broaden the audience and reach more cities. I hope you enjoy this webinar and that you find it useful. I will leave you now with Stefan Wehner, who will introduce you to the guideline and will guide you through it. Thanks.
Okay, hello everyone. I hope you can see my screen now and my presentation. Thanks for the introduction, Aris and Celia. As stated, I will give you a brief introduction into the MRV guideline that we have prepared within the last 6 months. It's a long document that you will see, providing a general framework for an MRV approach and how to adapt a specific MRV plan for your activities and your cities. Yeah, I'm partner of the greenwerk and I have worked on this on behalf of the Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency. So, what is the objective? Celia already raised this, but in particular on MRV, on an MRV framework, we would like to have track two main impacts of the project. One is obviously related to emission reductions, which is supposed to be expected coming out of your activities. And secondly, and in many cases even more important, also the impact and contribution to sustainable development. And both areas we have tried to equally cover in the MRV framework and in the guidance to come up with a robust and rigorous set of or a methodology that will help to also report to the national level and in particular to support the implementation and update of the nationally determined contribution in future. So we cover the three items: the measurement of greenhouse gas emission and co-benefits, the reporting and procedures on how to handle those data, and also the verification to double check and these data and information. How can the guidance be used and how is it structured? What you will find in the guidance is basically a generic guidance and a framework for district energy systems based on best international practice, including specific performance metrics and indicators. But it is rather a toolbox. It's not. It can't be just applied and implemented. It's a guidance, and you need to analyze your specific situation, your project, your city activities, and then take those elements out of this guidance, adapt those, and specify those for your individual activities, and produce, as we call it, city or project specific MRV plans. So basically, it's a two-step or two-level approach. The guidance itself, it's designed and structured in 8 steps. So it leads the reader or the applicant through 8 steps, which are presented here, and I go through it in more detail in a second. But the first, I just want to mention them already. The first is to identify and to develop a clear understanding of the activities and the mitigation actions actually to be covered under the MRV framework. Then, secondly, to assess and think about their actual impact. So do an impact assessment. We propose to use a causal chain analyzer. I will show you in a second an example. Thirdly, we provide an approach and examples on how to quantify sustainable development impacts related mainly to sustainable development goals. The fourth step is to quantify and quantify the climate impact with regards to GHG emissions. The fifth step is to set up, identify, and describe the MRV procedures and to clarify the required institutional arrangements and responsibilities. Sixth step is to prepare the monitoring plan itself, so the adaptation of the steps before to your specific city in one report. The seventh step is to take this strategy or this design, this framework, and to do gap analysis. So basically do a reality check to evaluate that the plan is actually implementable. And those 7 steps should be done once in the beginning of the project. Obviously can be adapted and should be adapted if more activities will join in future. And the final step, number 8, is to report once a year or every second year, depending on the procedures, but depending on the impact. So it's an ex post report based on the elements described in the plan. So just briefly, and I give you few examples out of the guidance, but obviously it's just a little bit superficial compared to the long document, but feel free to contact us afterwards and read the document. The first step is to identify the district energy project types. I have listed here 3. Obviously there are more, and there can be a combination of different activities, different technologies, but the guidance will provide and list all of those. I have 3 mentioned here. For example, the introduction of a new district energy system, heating system. This could be a completely new one, or the enhancement and refurbishment of an existing one, or the replacement of different heat sources with a more efficient one or with renewable fuels. Then the second is related to cooling. So basically the same, introducing cooling system, new cooling system. And obviously there could be also a combination of both, which is important in a lot of areas around the world, to provide both heat and cooling in what we call trigeneration. So first step is to identify what is your activity. The second is what will be the impact out of that. I show you an example here, and the guideline will provide you details on how to come up and what are the ideal approach of that, to come up with a simplified impact assessment using a causal chain. And it's in particular important to identify all positive and negative impacts of your project. It looks a little bit simple and maybe it's silly for a project developer, but it's very helpful, and it's a good exercise to identify different activities. So as for example here we have an introduction in dark blue, the project activities, introduction of a CHP plant and an extension of a district energy system, and this will lead to several intermediate effects, as we call it. So this new system will provide heat and warm water to new and existing customers, and these customers obviously will either replace existing, as we call it, isolate energy system, for example a single boiler in their flats, or overall reduce their consumption of fossil fuels or other energy sources. And then we see in yellow or in orange what we call SD benefits. For example, in the new existing plant, new jobs are created, and the overall system efficiency is enhanced. Fossil fuel consumption will be reduced overall in the system, and maybe also less will be required to import, for example, in some countries. Very important for district energy is the enhanced air quality in many cases, in particular when you reduce the use of stoves and biomass and coal in household used for cooking and heating. And obviously in green we have greenhouse gas effects. So this is very simple in this stage, but it can be rather complex and very long and in more detail. Depends on the project. The third step is to look and identify into the impacts of the sustainable development benefits. So how to quantify? Obviously, this should be within the framework of the Sustainable Development Goals, and energy supply, like district energy systems, and the sector where I usually work in, buildings, but also industry facilities, have some positive impact in different regards. So good health and well-being, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, sustainable cities and communities, obviously one very important one, and climate actions. But how to derive certain indicators out of that. So I show you a brief example here, which is related to sustainable cities and communities. We have the SD target, and we have provided a long table with potential impacts, like, for example, reducing harmful emissions like particulate matter, steaming from biomass and coal, increased visibility in cities, but overall improved livelihood. And then we have a set of indicators there where you could select off that meets your requirements and fit to your project. And in the guidance also we have in the annex for each indicator a table with information on how to measure it, how to report and verify that, and where it can be sourced. So it's a specified table for each indicator provided. The fourth step, similarly, has to use parameters and certain metrics to quantify the climate impact, so the emission reduction of your project or your specific project or overall city system. And we suggest to think systematically. Think in the system. So you have a supply side of different sources providing energy in form of heat or cooling, and you have a customer side, be it industrial or buildings, and you have a network usually. It can be very small because you start with a single project, but it can be more and more integrated into a big energy network. And the idea is to have obviously, on the one hand, on the supply side, determine the CO2 emission related to your energy sources. Ideally, your projects reduce either the energy efficiency measures, but particularly through the use of renewable energy, the overall emission level. And based on this, we suggest to identify a specific energy emission factor for the district energy that you supply for the energy customers. There's an approach and detailed on how to do it in the report, but very important is the first step, for all your activities, is to identify the baseline, so the current situation that your city and your system are in, and the so-called project scenario. So what will change? And I have an example here, and it's helpful also to depict this. On the left hand, you see the situation that heat and power is provided differently. Once in the power, electricity steaming from a power plant, and heat from a heat source, be it a boiler or so a heat plant. And in the project scenario, you have a CHP plant and maybe other heat boilers, but fueled with renewables, and overall the emission reduction takes place and the system is more efficiency. So for each project and each activity, it's helpful to, beside the impact, it's also to identify the baseline and project scenario, which is a little bit linked to each other, because without one or the other, you can't identify the impact. Maybe just to mention, obviously we have metrics to calculate the CDM, the carbon reduction or GHG reduction, and we have derived those from international standards, for example, like clean development mechanism methodologies, but also IPCC standards. So all this is described for the different types with a lot of formula in the report. I didn't want to show it here because it's quite technical, but you find the detail and the procedures all described in the report. Very important is the management, obviously, also of an MRV framework. So how are actually data and information currently collected, and what is available already or what is missing? So how are data reported to authorities, for example, from project developers or utilities, who has the responsibility to collect but also handle and transfer data. What are existing barriers? How are they overall reported also to the national level? And this is also important for the overall framework when it comes to the alignment with the national MRV and the upcoming enhanced transparency framework under the Paris Agreement, which requires the report on GHG emissions in form of an inventory, but also in impacts from mitigation actions. So the setup of the MRV procedures shall help to identify all this, to answer these questions, and also to identify where additional sources, technical assistance, but also human resources and financial resources are required. The sixth step is then to bring all this information, all this analysis into one plan. So basically, as I said before, the specific city plan that describes the project as it stands for that moment. Obviously, as I said, can be adjusted over time depending on the evolvement. Describes the measurement and the approach of the system using all these parameters and metrics that has been described, and showing the formula so that the staff, the people that are responsible for implementing this framework are aware on how to do it on the one hand. On the other hand, to be very transparent on the results later on, if you present a certain emission level or a certain mitigation level, that someone can understand, okay, how you have calculated this. Thirdly, describe the SD benefits and the contribution also in tables related to parameters, and then have the description of the MRV procedures, including an institutional setup. Seventh step is, as I said earlier, to confirm and check the compliance and the capability of this. So is it really implementable? And because such a system may be confronted with different barriers. Could be technical barriers, financial barriers, infrastructural barriers, social, political, institutional. So it's good to have a kind of reality check, and ideally it's done with regards in a kind of training and stakeholder consultation, and so that everyone is aware on how to actually process that, and on basis of the result of such a gap analysis and barrier analysis, the framework either needs to be adapted or maybe certain resources needs to be added. Final step is the preparation of an annual report based on this framework. And this is not repetitive. It's rather showing again, obviously, the results of, for example, what you have reached in 1 year. Again, it's helpful to have all the procedures, but then present really the emission reduction and the sustainable benefit impacts, also quantitative. And we have, as an annex to the main guidance, a template form for the monitoring report prepared that can be used with tables and structure, and the same, by the way, also for the monitoring plan. So attached to the main guidance document, you find for both the monitoring plan and the monitoring report templates on how to adapt those. To conclude, Celia already mentioned the benefits and the objective of the MRV work, and I think you will, when you read through, we have also a little bit of background information in the report. I think there are 4 main benefits related to MRV. It's obviously allowed better, efficient planning if you know data and you know your projects and you know the activities best, because data and information matters. So it facilitates the decision making and helps evaluate policies. It empowers the city to identify relevant opportunities. It also helps to attract financial support, for example, climate finance, because their MRV is a strict requirement. And it supports the overall national reporting towards the requirements under the UNFCCC. I think there are even more beside that. So the work to prepare such a plan is worth to do, and it overall increased the transparencies and sustainability of the project in my sense. That was very brief, and I hope you find that interesting. I'm happy to answer any question, and obviously, if you read through the guidance afterwards, please feel free to contact me or contact the Copenhagen Center on Energy Efficiency for any further question. And as Celia said, there will be further training activities and in future on this matter. Thanks a lot.
Good morning, everyone. District energy is really the very important solution for sustainable cities, because this cooling demand, especially on hot summer days, is a bigger problem for the grid. The peak load, when there's everyone turn on their air conditioners, this causes a big increase in the load, electricity load. So the national governments need to invest a lot in power plants, which may only operate a small number of hours during the year, and also the air conditioners lead to the heat island effects. Or district cooling, district heating side, you can see like in many parts of the world in the cities, in winter there's a horrible air pollution from the boilers. So there's a district, and with district heating, that offers the solution to use waste heat, to use coal generation to provide the heating with clean and low cost. So that's why IE's report is saying for the future livable and clean cities, district energy is a very important solution. As you can hear from Stefan's presentation, single projects can spend a lot of time and efforts to monitor their data, but to make this data more useful, it's important also for countries, for regional governments to systematically collect the data make this into national statistics or regional statistics, so that to inform the society, inform the policymakers what's the trends of the progress of the district energy and development in their countries and in their cities, so that they can provide basis for future investment and policy making. And during this presentation, I will talk a little about why we need to MRV indicators at a national level or regional level, and also the existing statistics from various countries. Some countries are already collecting and publishing data statistics about district energy, and in the end I will present, based on the country's experience, some of the district energy indicators that countries need to start with for publishing and collecting statistics on district energy. Why we do need such indicators at the national level is, one is for policy making. Only with reliable data you can make the policy really relevant, or it makes the right policy to make transparency and also accountability for different stakeholders. And this such information is also very important for banks and investors. Also, it's for the project operators, it's needed such statistics for target siting, benchmarking, and contributions. For a single project, they need some standards or data to know how they perform. It's what can perform as the top level, is the average level. So such kind of a statistic can offer such a basis to do the assessment. And also trends analysis, such as statistics, are very important to offer the experts analysis about what is the trends in the country and what's the future will it look like. So for with only we need for this purpose, we need a common set of indicators to increase comparability, both across different countries and across different regions. And it's very important for policy making, such systematic year after year data series. And also for this policy trends analysis to see where this is already doing a lot, where is the future focus of development. Statistics, there are a few features of statistics. First is aggregated, single and unrelated data or occasional collection of data is not statistics. Also, it is need to be different ways to see, okay, why we need the data to understand the situation, and statistics also need to be provided in numbers, and is estimated or is expressed collected, and also it's a standard of accuracy. So it's that's the why we people refer to data, because the reliability, we believe that the statistical data is collected according to certain standards and regulations, and also it's collected in a systematic manner so that enterprises or the local governments know how this data should be collected, and this will be aggregated. So for all the statistics, we need to have such a circle. First, what's the problem? Why you need to collect data? Then to plan for, okay, what's the data to be collected, and how frequency, and the different parameters to be covered, and then collect the data and do the analysis. Based on this, reach the conclusions. Existing countries, some countries are already doing district energy statistics. Some is more on the district heating side, some are both on district heating and district cooling, and it's really varied a lot from countries to countries. Some countries very detailed data on the project level, enterprise level. Some countries only publish the aggregated level data, like how many square meter for floors are district heated, how many floors are district cooling with provide serviced. At the EU level, you can see like we have the Euroheat and the Power. They directly collect the district heating data from their member companies. And some of the data, we can see that detailed data is only for their own paid members. But they also publish some general data on their in the public domain. You can see like such in the data, what is the heat come from, is recycled heat or district renewables and others. So they in this Euroheat and the Power data include what's the energy for district heating, and also how much district heat they sold during the year. Annual district sales, both in terms of how much energy and how much sales revenue. And also they include the pipeline network. How long is the pipelines, the heating system, and also this total capacity is what's the total installed capacity, what's the number of district heating systems, and what's the investment. Including also the floor space, how many million square meters in each member country they covered with district heating, and also the total heat demand. That means the total heat demand is actually sold to the customers. That deducted the network loss. And also the from each country, district heating, how much is supplied with cogeneration. Also, that's for district heating. Some is for own production. Some bigger heating users, like universities or hospitals, they may produce their own district heating. And also the average energy use for floor area. Of course, this is a factor is will affect the district heating demand. But it in itself depends on the building's insulation quality, also depends on the local climate conditions. Apart from that, district they also include some indicators about district cooling, including the district cooling total capacity and the sales, as well as the network or the trench length of the pipeline network. Denmark has a very good district energy data. At least you see from this data, they have a very good data about each plant, district heating and district cooling, where it's located, what's the capacity, what's the technology. They basically all cover every district heater system. Ideally, if a country systematically collects all the data that enterprises have, district heating, district cooling enterprise have, they can also produce such a data map about where is exactly each district energy system located, what's the source of heat, what's the capacity. So that is one thing, if that's provide very valuable information for policy making. You can see for the national indicators, you have at the project level, at the city level, or the regional level, and the national level. So this kind of data is, how is it presented or published, and how is it make it available to the public. Across the world, if you want to see the best district energy statistics, actually you can find them mostly in the Nordic countries. For example, one of the Norway have a lot of district energy data, and in Denmark they also have, but Denmark, the problem is that they are mainly acceptable for the Danish District Heating Association, but they are mainly only the detailed data only available for their members. For one example, good example is Finland. Finland have the district energy data for all their very detailed, and it's made publicly available. You can see the latest district energy statistics from Finland. They have basic information on their businesses. What's that district heating? What's the fuel district energy heating system, especially? What's the fuels they use? How much electricity they generate with the cogeneration production? And what's the fuel consumption? They have very detailed data. Also, they have data about the buyers and the sales, and also the what's the distribution loss. That's a very detailed data about which year each system starts and how many boilers, their district heat output. Basically, they have all the data, sales revenue, the price. So this have very detailed data for each district heating system. And apart from that, even Finland is a very cold country. They also have some district cooling projects, and they have national statistics on district cooling about each district cooling system, who are the main customers, how much sales they achieve in terms of energy and the sales revenue, and also their production, district cooling production. Capacity, and as well as free cooling. Free cooling is basically using the seawater, natural lakes, and the water for district cooling, and also the accumulators. How this free cooling is accumulated, and how this is supplied. Another example you can see on the other side is countries with only start or not so much data, because one example is China. You can see their national statistics, including some data about district heating supply capacity, including how many megawatt hour of hot water supplied, and including the energy supplied, the pipeline length, and also the floor area heated with district heating. The country so far does not have published any data about district cooling, although it's already have some district cooling projects. And their national data, there's also about a provincial level. data about district heating. From different countries, you can see that district energy statistics vary very much from countries to countries, from regions to regions. If you want the detailed data, you can find them in some of the Nordic countries. Even with countries with the same indicators, it can vary a lot. Some country can be like even for custom residential consumption of district heating, they can include some countries. They can include what types of buildings is this single houses or is multiple family buildings or two family buildings. Some countries they can include very detailed data. For commercial use, some are including like what are exact data about schools, hotels, hospitals, or supermarkets. This kind of data, some like Finland, they produce such data even. So compared to district heating, district cooling generally is the data statistics are much rare to find. So for the countries, some countries who do not have the national statistics about district energy, some countries only have very little data statistics. If you want to develop national district energy statistics, you need to consider the indicators to where to start from. First is about the district heating energy sector, about what are the number of plants, what are the number of district heating systems, the installed capacity, how much district heating really each year supply, what's the area, what's the network length, this kind of basic data. Another thing is about fuel consumption. That's very related to what the one indicator Stefan indicated is like the greenhouse gas emission reduction from this district heating projects. If you want to estimate, you need to know what are the fuels district heating energy use. Is it from renewable? It's from, for example, in Denmark, it's mainly from waste. A lot of waste is used to mainly for district cogeneration to supply the district heating and the electricity. And also from different, so how much, then you need to know, okay, what's the heating output from each type of district heat plants. Based on this data, these two kind of indicator was a fuel input and district heating output, then you can calculate, okay, how much is the fuel efficiency or conversion efficiency of different types of district heating projects. Then you need to know, consider, okay, another important indicator is what's the technology used? Is cogeneration, or is only for heating or cooling, or is also for tri-generation? So this kind of data is also very important when you want to inform the society, inform policy makers about the district heating, and also the size of different size. Is it a very big ones or small ones or the medium ones? And ownership. Some is public government owned or publicly owned, or it's private, and in some cases it can be cooperative, it's owned by the community. And also the composition of the networks. It's main pipes or secondary pipes. This is also very important. What's the medium of heating supply? Is heat or steam or hot water? That's also vary from different projects to projects. And also the customers. Who are these using the district heating? Is it residential buildings, or is commercial buildings and public buildings or industries? This is also a very important indicator when to consider or to start from. Regarding the district heating, that's also other indicator of investment. For example, that's also very relevant when government is thinking about public financial support. How much district investment from private sector or district in going into district energy sector, and what's the sales revenue, how much is sold, what's the heat loss in the networks, the prices, Then you have consider other indicators like digital indicator, temperature of the heating outflow and the return flow of the. So that's a kind of what's exactly the technical performance. And each year the expenses, that's the Nordic countries typically, because this, especially in Denmark, they have the district heating enterprise is publicly owned. That's why they also need to report the expenses, the prices, and also the role of district heating supply, also in terms of supplying heating and how much of the heating supply is covered by district heating, how much is by household have their own boilers or even air conditioners, and what's about in some countries. There's also data about district heating, the climate adjusted use of district heating. That's because district heating use change year from year. Also, another important factor is how cold. If there's a cold winter, that's a lot of heating is needed. If it's a moderate or it's a warm winter, then it's less district heating is needed. So you need to think the climate factor in terms of cool heating degree days. That's a fact. On top of this is the number of indicators. If your countries can go further, they can also like other indicators indicated in Stefan's presentation, like the greenhouse gas emission reduction from district heating, the pollutant reduction. That kind of data can also be covered in the national statistics. For district cooling, that's also the data you want to see to inform the society and the policymakers about the district cooling status. Need to tell how many district cooling systems are in operation and what's the starting year, how many customers. That's it, because typically district cooling is for commercial buildings in most countries. Very rarely existing district cooling system are servicing residential buildings. So also you need maybe you tell how many buildings, what's the capacity of district cooling, and what's the floor area, how much is district cooling is actually sold and supplied to the customer, and then the network length, and also the district cooling production from each technology type. There are many different types. Some are free cooling using the seawater, lakes, or main rivers to supply the cooling. Some are with chillers, some are heat pumps. So all different data, and you can also hear from Ms. Teng's presentation about using ice storage to first using the electricity used to store it in ice, then supply the heat cooling when you need during the day. And also that's the energy input for district cooling production. It's use electricity or it's using natural gas or trigeneration. What's the production capacity? What's the free cooling? And also including the network information, the price and sales revenue, if that's in countries, such data is publicly, should be publicly made available. And the role in job creation, the export. For example, in some countries, like in Denmark, this district cooling is also a main export of technologies, and also the temperature of the outflow and the inflow of the chilled water in the district cooling system, and the role of the floors serviced with district cooling and climate adjusted. Also because like district heating, district cooling also affected by the climate condition from year to year. In some years, if it's a very hot summer, then the district cooling demand can increase. And in years maybe it's not so hot summer, it's mild summer, then the district cooling consumption could decrease. So these kind of factors. When countries think about building up which district energy system indicator they want to select, they need to think about how the existing institutional setup for their administration, who will help collect the data, which institutions will be involved. Already it's based on existing statistical system, or is from the local government responsible district energy or heating, and what's the status, what's the trends. If district energy is mainly is a very important part of their future development for heating and cooling in urban areas, and also the existing district and data and statistics, where to start from, which indicator, and also there's a issue of cost. To collect the data collection, it is both cost for the enterprise and also for the government, whether they can report the data online, what's the frequency of have the data, reporting the data and processing the data, and the published data is every year, or is how is the frequency of published data every other year. In some countries, energy statistics often is not may not be published every year, especially in some developing countries. And also, what's the primary objectives? This is mainly only for some regions, or what's you want to inform the society about? And also, that's regulations about district energy business is mainly government owned. Maybe you have less problem of publishing data. Or it's what's the industrial organizations, especially for district energy, it's a kind of public infrastructure, urban infrastructure. So that's also in many countries like Japan, even US, China, the EU, they all have such kind of industrial associations, which play an important role in collecting the data, communicating the data with their members. So in some countries, open district energy data is also the associations, industrial associations publish their data. Some are only for their members, some are open, publicly available. So that's also needed a lot of coordination among the government, the top policy makers to consider, okay, what's the data to be published, consider all these different costs and benefits, what's the purpose of this uses of such data. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Teng. I came from Guangzhou, China. My speech today is about implementation of MRV in district cooling projects. Before start of my speech, I'd like to say thanks to C2E2 to give me the opportunity to communicate with expertise from different countries. My speech today contains 3 different parts. Part 1 is the project introduction. Part 2 is the implementation plan of MRV. Part 3 is about existing problems and the solutions. We had been operating this Guangzhou Pearl River Newtown District cooling project for nearly 10 years. The design cooling capacity of this project is 40,000 refrigerant tons in total, and it would be able to cover 2 million square meters of gross floor area. The cooling plant is built under a public green area within the CBD area. We built it in 2 steps, including phase 1 and phase 2. The construction of phase 2 was finished in 2018, which is last year. And finally, we have an underground cooling plant, a structure area of which is about 9,000 square meters. It contains 12 big size of electrical actuated centrifugal chiller. We use ice storage technology, which is a main shining point of this project on technical side because it can help to reduce peak load of the local power grid prominently. We also use large temperature difference and variable frequency motor actuated pumps and cooling tower. Also, we use load prediction and energy consumption control software. All these measurements are focused on one thing, a higher efficiency of the system. Now I'm going to talk about how we implement MRV on our project. The first important thing is to build up a good database of our cooling system. We follow 4 principles as shown in this slide here, which is complete and detailed, precise, stable, and safe. Of course, to do this, you need to spend more money, but for sure you will save back much more money if you have a better database. This is a flow diagram of ice storage cooling system. I will divide it into 3 different parts for easy introduction. Part 1 is a chilled water circulation system. As an example, please see we put the energy meter here, 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 and here. So at each moment, we could easily know how the energy flow around the pipe system. This is part 2, the glycol circulation system. The glycol will go from the chiller, the dual chiller to ice tank during the evening time to make ice. And it will go from the dual chiller to the heat exchanger during the daytime to cool down the hot water. This is part 3, the condensation water circulation system. You can see we put sensor like water temperature sensor, differential pressure transducer, and energy meters. We put these sensors on every branch pipe that connect to every equipment that need to be monitored. We installed totally 361 sets of sorts of sensors in our cooling plant. Except for that, our control system get another 2,000 data through communication with the different control panel of individual equipment. All of these data together make up a very good, complete and detailed database of our cooling system. The data doesn't talk by itself. I mean, people need to do more things. Here I list up 6 ways that we, how we do a data analysis and application that can help us to find out real value hidden in data. Number 1 to number 6 I mentioned just now are ways we already know. We had to know how to do the data analysis and application in that way. Number 7 to number 9, these 3 ways I can only say we know it's possible, but we haven't been there. Maybe people here in this webinar, someone know how to make it. Maybe we can talk later on. As final part of my speech, I'd like to talk about problems we had met during implementation of MRV on our project and how we handle with it. There are 2 problems we often met before. One is a bad installation location of sensors. might lead to measurement errors. And the solution is when the pipe system is designed and installed, it's important to give the required length of a straight pipe for installation of sorts of sensors. The second problem we often met before is accuracy of sensor might go unstable over time. The solution is to do maintenance calibration regularly. Normally we suggest not longer than 1 year. These two problems all are related to precision of your database. So I suggest you try your best to avoid any bad conclusion. That's all of my speech. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening and your patience. If you have any question, I would be happy to answer or give explanation to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Teng, for your presentation. We're at the Q&A session, where several attendees sent us many questions. I would like to start with my colleague, Xianli. And the question, Xianli, is this initiative technology agnostic? For example, there are few organizations that emphasize use of condenser water in district energy systems.
No, actually the district energy is really which technology fits best. It really depends on the local situations. We may give some examples in the presentation or in the guidelines, but we do not really promote or decide which technology fits the country situation best. That's really up to each city, each project to decide what's the most suitable technology for their situation.
Thank you, Xianli. The next question is for Celia, and the question says, now we realize the benefits and importance of MRV. Can my government contact UN Environment for more technical support on this? If yes, how should we do it?
Of course, if there are specific questions on how to implement the MRV framework, we can see with the technical team how they can be addressed. If there is a broader request for technical assistance that includes, for example, drafting a full MRV strategy that might require of additional resources from our side, then we would need to explore if this could be arranged and how this could be done. But in any case, if you're interested and you would like to receive support, please contact us, and then we can find out and see together how we can help you with that.
Thank you, Celia. The next question is for Stefan. So the question is, what if district energy systems leads to higher energy consumption but lower peak power? In this case, the benefit may not be emissions, but on power infrastructures. Due to tariff, DCS may be less costly, but not necessarily lead to lower energy consumption. What's your comment on MRV in such a case?
Yeah, thanks for the question. That's true. In particular, for district cooling system, one benefit of those systems is to reduce the peak demand, and we have captured this benefit of this impact in the sustainable development indicators, because it's as you said, it's not related to the greenhouse gas emission, and the greenhouse gas emissions or the energy consumption might be on the same level or even higher or increase. But the benefit of like smoothing the supply curve of electricity is the key benefit. Overall, I would see it from an MRV point of view on two levels. First of all is the project level. On the project level, this is a side effect which is rather outside of your project if you just consume electricity or reduce the demand of electricity with your customers. But obviously it's a big impact for the electricity provider if you're not the same. And so there's a benefit, and that benefit could also be related to reduced emissions. So it's basically outside of your scope, but there's an emission reduction within the scope and responsibility of power providers or the grid. And this could also lead to emission reduction. So I think from the MRV point of view, it's important to capture transparently both effects. First of all, also that the energy consumption can be higher, but secondly, also outside of your scope, the impact of the peak demand shaping. Thanks.
Thank you much for your answer. The next question is for Mr. Teng. The question is, the existing monitoring plan of your project is only with the project itself. What is the baseline you use to compare your project with when calculating the benefits of your project?
Because we use the ice storage technology in our project, in China, we don't have a real good method how to quantify the emission reduction of ice storage system. So what we use is the COP of this cooling system. The baseline we use is the COP of the cooling system. For example, for our project, the COP of the cooling system in our the designing scheme is about 3.5. So each year we will calculate the average COP of a cooling system based on all the operating data every year. The COP of a cooling system in last year, 2018, which is already reached up to 3.28. So we are still, trying to make effort to raise up this the COP of our cooling system continually. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Teng. The next question is for my colleague, Xianli. And the question is, it is interesting to set up a national system of district energy system statistics. In practice, how should we do this?
Yeah, this is a lot of work actually collecting the data, including deciding what's the data to be collected, and indicators to be reported by enterprise or projects. Also, you need to tell enterprise the guidelines how to collect the data to make sure the data are comparable, can be aggregated, and also in many cases you need the reporting system, how enterprises submit the data, the frequency. So also institutions, which organization will be responsible to receiving the data. All these need to be considered and given different roles and responsibilities to different organizations, the guidelines, the regulations. Yeah, all these are needed to be in place to start with district energy statistics.
Thank you very much, Xianli. The next question is for Stefan. And the question is, often the future clients don't know their energy consumption, inside brackets exactly, and even less their emissions. Do you suggest to install measurements to be able to gather this data, or what do you suggest to cope with this issue?
Thank you. Yeah, obviously, when you plan a project, you don't know exactly the energy demand and consumption in an ex-ante estimation. However, you will build your project based on a feasibility study, for example. So for the MRV framework, we suggest to have already during the planning phase, and as we call it, ex-ante, so future estimation of your emission reduction or emission level, and this can be based on assumptions that you have on the energy that will be produced or consumed. The MRV framework provides metrics on how you can derive CO2 emissions or other greenhouse gas emissions based on your energy estimation. Obviously, as I have presented, it's very important to measure and report afterwards, after implementation, during operation of the project. So it's the ex post perspective. And for this, measurements with meters and also maybe some other parameters that are required to do calculations, could be default values that we use, are required. So as we have seen in the example from the district cooling in China from Mr. Ling, is that that you have meters and you will, what's very important for the MRV on greenhouse gas emissions, and first of all is the energy used to produce your cooling or heat. So the primary energy source, be it fossil fuel or renewables, that needs to be measured, and ideally to what you deliver, and not only to the network, but also to the substation level. And even the best practice is you have that measurement of energy delivered on a house or building level, and even household or office or industrial facility level, because this obviously is the best case, or the best situation for many reasons, be it for billing, but also for calculating energy demand, for example, per square meters. Thanks.
Thanks, Stefan. Something extra about the guide that you mentioned. When will the DES MRV guide become available?
As Celia presented in her presentation, it's supposed to be published and online on the webpage of the District Energy and Cities Initiative within the next weeks, so mid-September. And so it's worth to check there, and I guess also the initiative will send information around to all the partners and news about the publication.
Thank you, Stefan. The next question is for Mr. Teng Ling. The question is simple: what's the lifetime of a sensor?
Okay, we got the authority from the government authority is 28 years.
Thank you very much for your response. I think we're past the time. So thank you for the detailed responses to the questions. So ladies and gentlemen, finally, we come to the end of the webinar. I would like to say thanks to the panelists for the informative and interesting presentations, and to the audience for their active participation. We hope that the presentation will be beneficial for all stakeholders involved in energy efficiency. Thank you for your attention, and wish you a good day or night from Copenhagen.